let you start.
Hi, we're doing our cultural presentation on Burma, also known as Myanmar. I'm Ellen.
I'm Emily.
I'm Jenny. I'm Stacy.
Burma's official name is Myanmar, but up until very recently they were controlled by an illegitimate military government with very poor human rights records, similar to North Korea. So it's common for the rest of the world to not recognize that government's decision to be called Myanmar. And so, however, recently in the past year, they've officially converted over to a more democratically elected government. But because it's so recent, most of our culture information comes from the past 50 years about when they were still under military control. But we'll let you know when something comes up that may be changing in the near future. Okay. Burma is 261,789 square miles, about the same size as Texas, and it's bordered by Bangladesh to the west, India and China to the north, Laos and Thailand to the east, and the southern portions are on the coast and face the Bay of Bengal and the Andaman Sea. In 1962, the military regime sought to isolate the nation and institute nationalist policies and called themselves the Socialist Republic of the Union of Burma. There was forced resettlement and forced labor dislocation of many ethnic groups, and a large number of refugees fled to neighboring countries. There are about 300,000 refugees in Thailand, Bangladesh, and India, mostly from ethnic minorities. And there are also ethnic minorities in the United States. 1988 to 2010 was a period of even more increased military regime control, and within a span of 4 days in 1988, 10,000 protesters were killed during widespread civil unrest. The violence from the military provoked condemnation from the rest of the world, and the leadership responded to try to earn favor with the rest of the world again by holding elections, but the elections didn't turn out how the leadership wanted, so they didn't change anything. In March of 2011, a civilian government was sworn in to replace the military junta. And in March 2016, Myanmar's parliament elected Hitin Kyaw as the country's new president. Hitin Kyaw was elected to the position by 360 votes, a little less than a third of the parliament's available 652 votes. However, Aung San Suu Kyi acts as the unofficial leader. She was a female leader of the party that Hitin Kyaw belongs to. There are 135 ethnic groups in Burma. The majority is the Burman ethnicity, with 68%, and minorities include the Shan, Karen, Rakhine, Chinese, Indian, Mon, and others. As you can see here, a large portion of the minority groups are around the borders of Myanmar, and the center is Burman culture, ethnicity. And so during the military regime, a lot of their major control was in the Burman central areas, and a lot of the more minority cultures in the outskirts. It was very rural land areas, and so there wasn't too much control. They had a little bit of independent freedom just because of their rural location.
Okay, so depending on what source you look at, about 85 to 90% of the country practices the Buddhist religion. And if you look at just the Burman ethnicity, that percentage is even higher. So most of the ethnic minorities practice other religions. And so, for example, 4% of the Burmese population is Christian, and it's comprised mostly of the Karen and Chin populations. This is due to a old legend in Karen folklore that says it describes a white brother and a lost book. And so when white missionaries came to Burma, a lot of Karens became Christians, and so about 40% of that minority group professes the Christian faith now. And so other beliefs that are practiced are Islam and Hinduism, as well as animistic beliefs, which is the worship of nature. So like the sky, animals, trees, and things like that. So the form of Buddhism that is primarily practiced is called Theravada Buddhism, and it's combined with animistic and superstitious beliefs. So the key tenets of Buddhism say that life is suffering, and that suffering is caused by craving or desire, and then that you can seek salvation, happiness, and achieve nirvana by overcoming this craving or desire. And the way to do that is primarily through like living a good moral life and like this balance of good and bad deeds. And so, like I said earlier, about 85 to 90% of the population practices the Buddhist religion. So it heavily influences the society as a whole. And for most young people between the ages of 10 and 16 will go to live in a monastery and begin the journey to monkhood. However, only some of them actually complete it. And women aren't allowed to be monks at all. They are allowed to be nuns, however, but nuns don't share the same social status that monks do. So monks are like the highest order of society within Burma. So like I was talking about earlier, there's this idea of good and bad deeds. So Buddhists believe in reincarnation. And so at death, like you are reincarnated into another form. And that's based on like your merit in your previous life.
So this is traditional clothing of Burma. The women wear pasos. It's a silk fabric that's floral design. They sew it in a cylindrical shape, and then they have it around their waist. Sometimes they tie it around their front and hold their baby, or sometimes they tie it around their head and carry goods. The men wear longies, and it's tied around their waist, and it's pretty much the same type of fabric. Sometimes use it like as a protection for rain.
She got everything right except the women's clothing are called longis and the men's clothing are called pasos.
She But you know, in India, the men's clothing is called, we call it lungi, L-U-N-G-I. Yes, I can see why there's a little bit of that confusion. But the American, what would be American scarlet? Sarong.
I have a question, just real quick. So we're talking about the monks. So you said like it's the highest order, I guess. Do you know what it takes to become a monk? Like what they have to go through? Just out of curiosity.
I don't know exactly. I just know that like they have to, like monks have to adhere. I guess they have to go through all the teachings, and they have to adhere to a certain lifestyle and like discipline. But I don't know specifically what the order.
You know, they have a seminary, you know, and so you've got to leave home and go live in that seminary. And I'm sure
And
it's
they start as children.
Okay.
So these are some table etiquette. People in Burma, they usually sit on the floor and they put their meals on a low-seated table. They usually eat one meal in the morning and then one meal right before it gets dark. Rice is the main component of many of the meals. They have vegetables and fish and fruit. They also serve curry, but it's not like the Indian curry. It's heavier and more oily. And no alcoholic beverages are served with meals. They usually do juice or tea. So here is a common ceremony in Burma. It's called Gameon. It's a water festival, and it's celebrated during their New Year, which is in the middle of April. And so people are in the streets, and everyone's splashed with water, and they wash the Buddhas with water. This is another celebration. It's called Kaisen. It's the time that Buddha reached enlightenment and nirvana. People march to banyan trees and wash them with scented water. And this is the start of when men become novices, which is their start of becoming a monk.
And you'll know what a banyan tree is. It's these huge trees that have aerial roots that come off the tree and actually then I don't know if they kind of then burrow into the ground and but they form these huge. Do you have a picture?
I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah. But anyway, they're these huge trees, and the reason why the banyan tree is so revered is because when Buddha got enlightened, he sat under a banyan tree and was meditating. And so then that's why the banyan tree has become a symbol, as God as a place in Buddhism. Sorry.
So in the Burman culture, the head is considered the most sacred, and the feet are considered dirty. So when you go into a home or a temple, you remove your shoes, and when you sit down, your feet should not be pointed at anyone. So a lot of the time, you could kind of see it on the food slide. They sit with their feet tucked under them so that it's not pointing at anyone. And then the head should never be touched. So for kiddos, you can't just sit there and pat them on the head. That's considered very inappropriate. When they address people, they don't really use personal names as much as they use titles. So they'll call an older woman auntie, or they'll call an older man uncle or teacher or something like that. I believe, I'm not really sure what they call the younger generation. I think it's like sister and brother and stuff like that. No, they just call them. Oh, okay. I wasn't sure about that, but I might go look that up. And then whenever you accept a gift, they accept two hands. They accept it using two hands, so you kind of hold out your hands like this, and that's considered respectful for you to do that. Also, when they shake hands, which isn't very common, but when they do, they hold their right hand. It's done with the right hand, and they hold their right elbow using their left hand. So it's just support, and that's also considered respectful. Thanks, Evelyn. You're welcome. And it's also considered very inappropriate to lose your temper in public. So for the family dynamics, the father is called the lord of the forefront of the house. That's what that kind of translates to in English. And that calls to mind a very stern father figure, but in reality, he's just a big softie. The mother is more the disciplinarian in the family. She kind of sees through their little shenanigans and calls them on it. But she's in charge of the rest of the house, so she is in charge of like household chores and everything else that goes on, including teaching children. They teach children. The mother is primarily in charge of teaching them discipline, morals, and rules of society and stuff like that. So she has a lot of authority in the household. And then parents are usually very indulgent with young children. Like if a baby's crying, they're not just going to leave their baby crying. Sometimes here, if the baby's hungry, but or the baby's trying to sleep, and you're trying to get them to sleep on their own, you kind of leave them crying. They won't really do that as much. If the baby cries, they'll pick them up. But when they do get to a certain age and it's time to start teaching them the certain rules and everything, they're very good about doing that and making sure they know what to do. Humor is a big part of the family culture. They laugh and play just like we do with their parents. We do with our parents. It's a fun environment. And then corporal punishment is very unusual, like spanking and stuff like that. But it's normally done by the lower socioeconomic families who are less educated and might be under financial stress. If any abuse is suspected, neighbors will intervene. It's not just gone unnoticed. And then for gender roles, we kind of talked about it a little bit with the monks and the nuns. They are forbidden to enter certain parts of the religious temples, like the men can enter the center portion and the women can't. And it's widely believed that women cannot reach enlightenment. And there are a few unspoken rules for women, such as it's not legal or anything, but it would be considered improper for women to drink alcohol in public or rode on the top of a bus or boats. But compared to the surrounding countries, they're actually still fairly progressive because the most influential politician is a female. Her name is Aung San Suu Kyi, and it's just a very good example that women in Burma still have a lot of freedom compared to surrounding countries.
Traditional occupations in Burma, they have been historically thought of as the rice basket of the world. They're one of the largest exporters of rice. So the majority of people live in rural areas and rely on sustenance farming and fishing or crop farming of rice. Men prepare land for planting, thresh rice, and transport goods to the markets. Women transplant rice seedlings, do domestic work at home, and raise the children. And they can also be like professions such as teaching and nursing, and commonly female-dominated roles. Both men and women as adults participate in harvesting, petty trade, and handcrafts at local markets. They can also be spirit mediums or religious healers, and they also participate in music and theater in the communities. Here's some pictures of a man fishing, a little boy transporting goods either from a market or to a market, one of a small local market with handmade goods and crafts, and then men transporting some sorts of goods off of a boat. Children's occupations, most of this information is when they're under military rule, and since they are no longer, that may be improving. But boys usually go to public school and receive some education in monasteries, and few girls are educated and are mostly educated at home on domestic type activities. Since 1962, when the military rule was installed, educational infrastructure deteriorated, and 66 to 75% of children dropped out of elementary school before 5th grade. Curriculum is scrutinized and controlled by the military regime and the government, and it's often forbidden to teach languages other than Burmese. But like I said, this either has already changed since March of this year or will be changing very soon. Also, child soldiers during the military regime. In 2002, it was reported Burma had the highest number of child soldiers in the world, estimated at 70,000, and most likely more. 2011 introduced the introduction of civilian government. The number of child soldiers has steadily decreased since then, and in 2015, 146 former child soldiers were released from captivity, including 28 who were still underage. So most of those child soldiers had grown into adults and had spent their entire childhoods and most likely lives as soldiers.
This is what a typical house looks like in Burma. They're usually made of bamboo and wood. The walls are usually made of bamboo, and the flooring is usually made of wood. The front part is the veranda, which is where guests and neighbors come over, and that's where they're entertained. The middle part of the house is the living area, like similar to a living room in the United States. The back part of the house is where cooking takes place. That's a covered area where rice is stored. Healthcare in Burma is not very good. They have few hospitals, a few doctors. They don't receive a lot of funding for medical professionals, medications, equipment, so many people have to rely on home remedies, and many illnesses they believe come from malicious spirits.
So the obesity rate in Burma is about 4% in adults. This is really low compared to the U.S., which is about 30 to 35%. And you can see on the image as well, so they fall in like the 0 to 5% range. And children, like about 22% of children under 5 are actually underweight. So obesity is not a common thing. It would be considered very atypical in Burma. Our client was Bonnie Grape, and so she's depicted in the movie. She's a mother of 4. She and her youngest son, Arnie, appears to have autism spectrum disorder in the movie, and she seems to favor him. She calls him her sunshine, and seems to dote on him. So she is a widow. Her husband hung himself, I believe, 7 years ago, and she hasn't left the house since then. Has become very obese. So she is a stay-at-home mom, but she is rarely depicted as doing anything in the household. She's usually on the couch and isn't seen showering, toileting, cooking, or dressing herself. Even meals are prepared by her daughter Amy, and then the children set the table and bring the food to her. So she relies on the older children to work and run her home. So Amy takes care of the cooking, and then Gilbert takes care of Arnie, and she supervises, as they say in the movie.
So for the occupation we chose sitting down for a meal, and we chose that because they the Burmese culture eats meals at a low table, so she would have to be able to get down to the floor in order to eat with her family, which is an important part of the day. So I think that's the only part where they all are together at the same time. So we decided, we have two different frameworks, and the first one was a biomechanical framework. So the therapeutic activity would be to grab a chair and set it around the stair area somewhere where she would be able to sit in the chair and then stand up from it, give Arnie a high five since he's always up high somewhere, and then sit back down and do a couple reps of those. To grade it up, we would lower the height of the chair so she would have a greater distance to go in order to give Arnie his high five. And then to grade it down, we would raise the height of the chair to give her a little more ease in order to do that. And for the task-oriented approach, we chose actually sitting down, trying to get down to the floor in order to eat at that table. So we decided she would use a support structure, kind of similar to grab bars, but maybe have rungs on it, to get herself down to the floor, and then she would either need assistance to get down there, and she would probably definitely need assistance to get back up, but we would work on trying to get her to do that on her own using those grab bars. So to grade it up, she would use a lower rung to lower herself and raise herself, and hopefully we would go from higher to lower as she started lowering herself. And then to grade it down, she would use a higher rung to get down there, and probably moderate assistance to lower herself and raise herself up.
So, in terms of using those rungs, you're talking about a higher rung as opposed to, height-wise would be higher up and the lower rung would be lower down. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
And which one would be harder?
We're saying the lower one would be harder because she has to get lower in the first place by herself to get there and then use it to get lower versus, and I think it might be different going back up.
A higher one would be, well, a lower one would be harder to get back up because you have to push and then you're still kind of in a squatting
Yeah.
position and you have to continue to stand up. But a higher one, you can mostly pull yourself up with your legs assisting your arms.
Yeah, so it would be switched. So going down, the lower rung would be harder, and going up, the higher one would be harder.
I don't know what would be easier.
Well, the reason I'm asking is you need to think through this process because in terms of strength, the only thinking of going down, we also have to think in terms of coming up, right? And so as therapists, when we plan an activity, you've got to be careful about what we've set up because then if you take them down to the floor, you've got to bring them up at some point.
Yeah.
Okay? So think through that and we'll talk about it and let's see what may be the right thing to do. I like the idea that you use task-oriented approach. I like the idea of actually engaging her in the task in terms of getting her down, getting her up. But let's look at in terms of what type of a rung we need to use and where the location of the rung needs to be for her to go down and then come back up. Okay, so the questions.
Okay. Yes. So we have like a little game type thing. So we made food. It's called mango cake, but it's not really a cake. It's more like a frozen custard type thing.
Dessert, yeah.
We're not sure, but it should taste good. And so what we wanted to do is invite a representative from each group to come up and answer a question. And the way that you will like buzz in is to stand up. So like our activity is sit to stand or stand to sit. So that's kind of the idea.
And we'll have you sit on the floor and then have to stand up as fast as you can before someone else. So who paid attention and who can stand up?
Yeah, and then so there's 5 questions and 4 people in each group, so
You get the mango cake.
My hands are kind of tiny.
it's over here.
Okay.
Stand up.
That's cheating. Are they fighters?
No, it's your turn. Oh.
Is there only 4 groups?
There's 5 choices.
I can go.
Megan.
Come on, Megan. Megan, that is not a good starting position.
What are the primary occupation of Burmese women?
I didn't break it.
just trying to be vague. Primary occupation. Oh, domestic work at the home, teaching, nursing, all the above.
In what setting are meals eaten?
Yeah, I can make it.
Okay.
At the low table, so you're on the point.
The legs are kind
Burmese client, all of the following are etiquette rules that you should follow except.
Wait, you want to do all of them except?
Yeah. Which one do you not do?
You don't want to point your feet at them.
Yes.
Away from them.
Oh,
That's
that's
it.
Oh, but touch their head too, right?
Yeah, but it's a
always do not.
So it's like, do not touch their heads.
Do not do that.
Yeah.
That's tricky.
But don't not do it.
True or false? Obesity is considered atypical.
Megan,
Correct.
you let us down. I'm sorry, y'all.
Alright, so let's ask, you have any questions for the group? What percentage of the American population are of Burmese descent?
I don't know.
Do you know where the Burmese refugees, if there are any in the United States, where they're located?
There's a lot in Houston, I know.
Houston, there's a lot in San Antonio.
And is there any reason why they've chosen Texas and this place?
I'm not sure.
Well, usually when refugees come, when immigrants come, they kind of go to places where there are people from their own community located.
Yeah.
But definitely, I do know the Rohingyas in Houston. And right now, that's the big group that's being persecuted in Burma. Being persecuted. So a good dish that we all may want to make look at, if you want to cook Burmese food, is Burmese cow suey. It's a soup. It's really good. It's KHOWSUEY.
I think that's just how you say
It's
That's
very
large bodies.
I'll share it.
So we get
eggs or milk.
ours has milk in it also.
I bet they're going to
This is really good, you guys.
Yeah, it's mango.
Whoa. They're gonna be like,
Yeah.
Oh, I guess I should have now.
yeah.
No, I won't. No, I'm going to like ice cream.
I feel like I've had
There's only like 11 thousand. Which is not very high number when you're talking about and they're in New York City.
No, actually,
I think it's like about 20 years. Yeah, they were left by each other. Oh, no, no, I left.
Oh, and notice the black and orange light thing.
Oh yeah.
And then we're giving her a moment.
So when you're presenting, if you can stand around here, screen, yeah. The videotaping.
Okay.
I didn't tell them there.
If you guys want to, but we brought blankets and you can sit on the ground, which is really common in
Cultural experience.
So, if you like to be a part of that, we have blankets, you can sit on the ground. You don't have to, you can sit in the chair.
Here's blanket. Do you sit on the blanket?
Yeah.
Or do we
Or
wrap?
you can use it.
It's more for comfort. We were trying to accommodate.
I know, we just got really close to the camera.
Yeah. How about I'm just gonna go like this. Oh, do you think I just messed that up for the where it was supposed to be?
Probably. Is there enough space?
Where are you going?
Okay.
Hey, y'all just cue me when it's my time.
I'm preparing something special for you.
Do we have enough?
Hey Laura, how do I make it so?
Oh,
Gonna come out.
did you press the button?
Yeah.
So, and then you hold it.
Oh.
Wait, you don't have to. Huh?
Oh, it's not that good.
That's really good.
It's okay, yeah.
Savor that while you can. Don't worry.
Maybe save some to wash
For the
us down.
aftertaste, yeah.
That would be wonderful.
Namaste. So we chose the Hindu Nepalese American
Do
culture.
you want to tell them what that means?
We will. Yes.
So we chose to put the great family into the Hindu Nepalese American culture, and so we have a Venn diagram to show the overlap between the family and the culture, and so yeah, we'll start with the customs, traditions, holidays, and all that good stuff. So just a little background for you guys for Nepal. It's in Asia, and its neighboring countries are India and China. Its capital is Kathmandu. Official language is the Nepali language. It's home to, as you can see, Mount Everest, one of the tallest mountains in the world. And just a fun fact, the nation's flower is a rhododendron. And here we have some traditional Nepali clothing. So over here you see the man, and what they wear is called a, excuse my pronunciation, a Darua Suryawal?
I'll have to look at the spelling.
Yeah. Anyways, so then they also wear, it's comprised of mainly a long tunic down to the knees, and then it ties at the sides, and pants and shoes called the docha. And then they wear, the jacket is worn occasionally for warmth. And then they typically wear, as you can see the two pictures, the hats, and that's called the Daki Topi, and there's two different types of caps, but this one's primarily the main one that they wear. and that is just kind of resembles or like symbolizes like pride, honor, and like nobility. And then you have the women who wear what is called the kurta, suyual, I don't know how to
Kurta.
Kurta?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kurta is kurta. What is the other one? Suwa?
It's
Salwar?
Yeah.
Salwar.
That's not how they spelled it, but I think so. Anyway, general idea. So that's typically the flowy pants and the ankles cinched like the ankles. Again, a long tunic, but they typically cover their shoulders. And most of them will sometimes have the scarf draped across as well. And they're usually just very brightly colored, and they're not afraid to mix and match patterns. But up here you see the woman in red, and that's a very symbolic color for their culture. And instead of wearing wedding rings, often women will wear the red cinder powder called the tika, or also known as a bindi.
Can I tell the group something about that building?
Yeah.
It represents one of the gods' third eye, and it's to instill fear in other men, so other men will stay away from it.
And yeah, so that's kind of some of their traditional dress. And then just some age-appropriate occupations. So the men generally will work in the fields and do plowing, trades, and oftentimes will go outside the villages to do other work. The women typically are involved with like the household, in charge of the cooking, the cleaning, the caring for children, and then also primarily within Hinduism, women are really responsible for leading the family in their spiritual activities or participations, such as prayer and things like that. In the more rural areas, children often are working alongside with their mother and helping with household chores, minding the animals, or often, as you see here, just caring for their younger brothers and siblings. But in the more urban cities and larger towns, children will generally attend school.
All right, so for gestures, so we introduced and said namaste at the beginning, and that means either I salute the God within you or I bow to the light within you. It's just a really common gesture that you can use to say hello or a goodbye. It's just a really warm saying that they use. Also, they use more familial words to greet each other. So DD and Bahini are younger sister and older sister, and then Dai and Bai are younger and older brother.
Yeah.
And then Buwa and Ama are mother. So those are very common warm gestures towards other people. And then if you're trying to be more formal and respectful to someone, you would add G at the end. So if I said Bethany G, that would be showing you respect. And so
you say that to an older person.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's for respect to the elder. And so, thank you in English is actually very commonly understood throughout the country. And so, other common gestures that we might find confusing here in America versus in the country, if I tilt my head side to side, that actually means yes. And then to say no, I would hold my hand up and shake my hand like I was wearing a bracelet to say no. And some other common things you might see is they're not a very touchy-feely culture, but it is common to see the same sex holding hands down the street. It's just a friendly type of way to walk down the street together. And then some poor etiquette, I guess, would be very offensive. You do not want to point the soles of your feet at another person, so especially while eating or praying, you want to keep your feet tucked. Yeah, watch out, guys. And then you don't want to touch the forehead of another person. And then it's also rude to point. Like if I'm pointing at you, that's a rude gesture, so I point with my chin to signify that I'm pointing. And so cuisine, the food is a very large part of their culture. And so I'm just going to take you through a basic, I guess, meal. So we would all dress conservatively and arrive early to the house. We would all take our shoes off at the door, and they kind of run on an island time, and so we may arrive at a certain time, but we might not eat for a few more hours. So it's just casual environment. And the meals are eaten on the floor, so that's why we kind of have it simulated, because a lot of their prayer and meals are eaten on the floor. And cleanliness is a very large thing in their culture. So a large basin would be passed around for everyone to wash their hands. And it's considered unclean to pass food with the left hand, so everything must be given or passed with the right hand. And if you have already taken a bite of your food or touched to your lips, it's considered unclean, and so you shouldn't like drink from someone else's cup or eat off of someone else's plate. And the mother is actually the one who, within the home, would cook the meal and serve it. And so she will go through this process of serving the entire party multiple times. And so it's extremely rude not to take a serving. And so you should always take a little bit and portion control that. And so the mother will actually wait until everyone has been served their multiple helpings before she will actually sit down and eat. And at the end of the meal, you should always leave a little bit of food on your plate to show respect to the person who has prepared it, to say that they've been served more than enough. And so some traditional foods are the dal bhat takari, which is rice and lentils and curry, and all their food is served with a big helping of rice.
I think you did a pretty good job pronouncing. I think you did a pretty good job pronouncing the words.
Oh.
So dal is lentils.
Okay.
Did you say bhat?
Bhat, yes.
Yeah.
And then chicken.
Yeah, tarkari is vegetable.
Okay. And then I also have the momos.
Momos, yes. That's actually Tibetan.
Oh, okay. They had it on.
But see, Tibet is just so close to Nepal, and you know, when the Chinese aggression and when China invaded Nepal, the Tibetans came and settled down in Nepal. So there's a large Tibetan community in Nepal, and so momos now has become there.
And so they have a lot. They cook with a lot of spices and curry, and it's just a bunch of. I guess I have some examples here. How there's a bunch of different like veggies and rice. And then feasts. I'm just going to segue into weddings because Nicole's about to talk about that. But feasts at weddings are sitting on the ground as well, and you kind of sit within your caste system. And the food is actually served on a leaf because it's very easy to dispose of.
So kind of typical for, this is just a little glimpse. I don't know if sound is hooked up. Oh, yeah. So this is just kind of to give you a little taste of traditional Nepali music during a wedding. So this is called the Hanche Baha. And so it's just kind of something fun to kind of show you guys what they partake in. And so within marriage, within the Hindu culture for marriage, women really marry into the men's family, and it becomes so they move in typically with their in-laws and like the men's like generational household. And then also it's pretty common. So within traditional Hindu culture, the widowhood practices can be extremely conservative. So pretty much when your spouse passes away and you're female, you are not supposed to partake in wearing the color red. You do not eat meat. You abstain from celebrations. And you no longer wear the tika or the bindi. And for them, and also sometimes in some places it's more extreme. If a widowed is walking on the street, people will steer like away from them and like cross the other side of the street, and they're women. Yeah, so they just kind of very much like not allowed to do much. And then also though, but it's becoming really hard for women because for them to abstain from the color red is to like abstain from beauty and to abstain from like celebrating. But that's been, I was reading that it's kind of slowly changing, like slowly progressing towards it's not as conservative.
Cool. So next we're going to look specifically at Hinduism within Nepal. Because when you look at religion in Nepal, 86% is Hindu. And so that's the religion that we chose to look at. And so first we're just going to look at like the overall beliefs of Hinduism, because I know I was kind of confused when I started doing research. I was like, I really don't know. And I was very surprised to find out that Hindus actually believe in one true God, one supreme God, who is a trinity. And so the main God, the one on the right, has three forms: Brahma, the creator; Vishnu, the preserver; and Shiva, the destroyer. And so commonly when we think of Hinduism, though, I feel like we think of like many gods that they worship. And so there are many lesser gods, like under the supreme God, that are worshipped for specific purposes. And,
So Shiva, the destroyer, is the one who represents that red bindi.
So yeah, so some other concepts within Hinduism. The first is moksha.
And so like many religions, Hinduism believes that the individual soul is eternal. So when you die, though your body is gone, your soul continues to live. And similar to Buddhism, they also believe in reincarnation. And so when you die, your soul will enter into a new body. And the overall goal of Hinduism is moksha, which means the liberation or release from that cycle of reincarnation. And when you achieve that, that's when you're reunited with Brahma, the god of creation. Another concept is dharma. So to reach moksha, you have to have good dharma, which is basically just having right conduct, righteousness, moral law, and duty. And they gather that from their scriptures, which are called the Vedas, I believe. And so good dharma also equals good karma. And so I feel like we've all heard kind of about karma. And so basically, they believe that like in this life, if you have pain or have suffering, it's a result of not behaving well in the last life and not having good dharma. So good dharma leads to good karma.
And Vedas were introduced in 10,000 BC.
10,000 BC, oh wow.
So their script has been around a long, long time. I mean, at least that holy book.
So one way to achieve good dharma is to do your daily prayer. So this is the part of the religion that is done daily on a daily basis. And they call it doing puja, and puja means ritual worship. And so most Hindus do this within their home, and they have a home altar set up at, I think it's the northeast corner of their home. It's considered the holiest place. And that space is only for worship, so nothing else can be done there. And that includes individual and group prayer. And I have two examples here of just a home altar. The left one is a little more extravagant. The right one is like a TV stand with God. So it can be as simple or extravagant as you wish. I mean, usually the family's favorite deities are placed on their home altar. They also pray 1 to 3 times daily. 1 is kind of what's necessary, and 3 is like the optimal number. And the best time to pray is right before sunrise. It's considered the holiest time. And before you approach the altar, you should bathe fully, but sometimes they just wash their hands and their feet. And they also approach barefoot, and they have to sit below the gods. So wherever the gods are on the altar, they must be below, which typically means they sit on the floor.
Okay, so within Hinduism there is a caste system, which is then, because Hinduism is such a huge part of Nepal, Nepal has a huge caste system that flows down into India as well, I know. And the caste system, within each level of the caste system, there are moral responsibilities that are explained in the Vedas, which is the holy book that we were just talking about. And so the highest level of the caste system are the Brahmin, and they are the priests, the scholars, and this is the closest to God. And so to the god Brahma, who is the creator, and so then from here you could be reincarnated up, or not reincarnated, but released into Brahma. Below the Brahma is the Kshatriyas, which are the warriors and the protectors. So within American culture, this would be police officers and even lawmakers and soldiers especially, and people protecting. Below them are the Vaishyas. I looked them all up. I can't pronounce any of them. Vaishyas. The Vaishyas, which are the merchants and the traders. These are skilled craftsmen. And they are the lowest level of the caste system that partakes in the rites of passage. So the Shudras, which are the farmers and the laborers, they don't do a lot of the rites of passage. And then below that is the untouchable, which is considered the impure, which goes back to the widows that we were talking about. So these are people that you don't even want to be seen in their presence. Being near them makes you dirty. Low parts of society. And so this is the caste system. You're born into your caste, and you can only be moved lower through excommunication, but you cannot in one lifetime be moved higher in the caste system.
In one lifetime, right?
Yes.
When you're reincarnated, depending on the life you live, you could go into
Yes. So your dharma if you have good dharma in your next life, you could be moved up in your caste. These are some of the Hindu holidays, and so the first holiday that I was going to talk about is Holi, which is a celebration of joy in spring. It's celebrated in March, and it is a celebration of the overcoming of death of the death of winter into the joyous time of spring. It's a celebration of the good harvest to come, and it is marked around the world by this the throwing of beautiful color powders on each other. The next one is Diwali, which is the celebration of lights, and it is a 5-day celebration for good prosperity in the new year. Each day has a different piece to it, and the third day is the celebration of lights, where they light millions and millions of candles and light off fireworks, and it's just like beautiful color and lights everywhere. The third holiday is Maha Shivaratri, which is not really a celebration, but it's much more somber. Shiva is the god, the destroyer, and so this is honoring the god of destroyer. And it actually happens every month, but they do one big one once a year in the winter. And it's celebrated near the rivers because Shiva has water aspects with his deity, and so they celebrate there. And then Navaratri celebrates the goddess Durga, who has 9 forms, and so it's a 9-day celebration. Each day celebrates a different form of this goddess, and the women dress in these beautiful gowns, and each day the gowns sort of change to represent the goddess's growth as she grows. And then the last holiday is the Ganesh Chaturthi, and this is Ganesh, the god Ganesh, who has an elephant-headed god representing beginnings. And so he is normally worshipped at the beginning of the day, at the beginning of prayer ceremonies, at the beginning of lots of different things. It's a 10-day ceremony overall, and the last 4 days they bring the god and his spirit into the idol shape that you see here, and then they pray to him, they sacrifice to him, and then on the last day they submerge the god in the rivers. And so it's super dangerous. As you can see, all of these people are going to go into the river with the god, and so lots of people drown, and it's really dangerous. But it's a big celebration, and and so those are the holidays. And then there's 16 rites of passage that the top 3 caste areas go through. The first 9 are done in the womb and at birth and within that first year. And then the 10th one is called the Upanaya. And it is the sacred threading ceremony. It's done to young boys and sometimes girls if you're of a really high caste at the ages of 9 to 13. And it is a ceremony that shows their obligation towards knowledge, towards society, and towards their elders. And at this ceremony, the boys are washed, their heads are shaven, they're fed a meal by their mother, and then they receive this thread that you can see he's holding out, and they will wear this thread the rest of their life. And so every year, annually they'll replace the thread with a new thread, but they always have a thread on to represent this knowledge and respect. And then there's the weddings, which is a vivaha, and the woman wears red instead of white, which is the power and beauty. And during the ceremony, they take 7 steps. The husband and wife take 7 steps together, representing food, strength, wealth, happiness, children, sustenance, and unity. And so each step that they take in this circle represents each of those things. And then at death is the Antyeshi, which is a cremation ceremony that is in Nepal is performed on the edge of the rivers, where the body is cremated and the spirit is released through the head, through the skull. The Atman spirit, which is the eternal spirit, is released to either be reincarnated or released to Brahman. And so this is a really hard ceremony to perform in the United States because you can't cremate on the side of rivers. And so for Hindus in the United States, it's a very controversial, hard thing to accept as being cremated in a crematorium because your spirit is not released as well through a crematorium. And this ceremony cannot be as beautiful and vibrant as it is on the edge of a river. So yeah, those are the rites of passage. And then I think we're going out now to then come back in and look at the Bonnie Grape site.
So Bonnie Grape is a first-generation Nepalese woman immigrated to the U.S. about 15 years ago. Her husband committed suicide, so she now falls under that widowed category within the Hindi culture. So she has her, and also since her husband's death, she gained around 300 pounds. And she has 4 children, and the 2 older and then 2 younger. Her eldest is a male, and he's taken on that Hindu role of that they will kind of take in and start taking over like the father's position and helping with the bigger things around the house. But as for her, she used to be very active and very participated in life, and was very involved with her children. And now, since her weight gain, she is unable to fulfill her role as the mother of the Hindu culture. So not really being able to do the household chores, but most importantly, she's not been able to really lead them spiritually.
So next we're going to look into the activity we chose and how we adjusted it to suit Bonnie. So the occupation we chose was prayer, since it's something that Hindus do daily. And since Bonnie is the mother, she leads her children in that as well, so it's going to do both her participation and her children's. And so the activity we chose was to have her sit on the floor in front of her home altar to participate in prayer.
We use the biomechanical approach for our frame of reference because we would like to remediate Bonnie to her previous healthy state of being able to pray daily and sit to stand for these prayers. And so we would like to focus on the weakness that she has, the range of motion loss that she's had, and then also the endurance of being able to sit in such a low position. And so we will work on strength and endurance to get these back.
And so, to grade this activity down, we're going to raise the altar because you have to sit below the deity when you perform this prayer ceremony. And so, in order for that to stay true to the Hinduist religion, we would raise the altar and then also provide a higher chair for her to sit on, so she's still able to lead the prayer ceremony. And then also provide some sort of adaptive equipment for her to get back up. And then because you can perform the prayer one time a day, we would start with having it be, the goal would be 1 time a day. And so then as we increase or grade it up, we would increase the amount of times she does this a day, so then going to 2 times a day. We would lower the chair, lower the altar, so getting either a lower stool or a cushion to get to the point where she's able to increase that range of motion, strength, and endurance. To the point where she's able to completely lower herself to the ground and without the use of adaptive equipment, and be able to do this up to 3 times a day.
Great. And so you see they're using adaptive equipment, but they're using the biomechanical frame of reference where they're looking at recovery, and the end goal is to take away that equipment where she can just independently go down and get back.
And so we also wanted to look at an alternate activity as well, because there are some days when since prayer is so personal, there's going to be some days that Bonnie doesn't want to participate, or the holiest time we pray is also before sunrise, so there might be some days where she's already done her prayer and now you're like, okay, now what? So we wanted an activity where she would be required to both sit and stand, and so we thought of folding and putting away laundry. Since she is the mother, she will be doing those kind of household tasks to provide for her family, and she would sit down to fold the laundry and then be required to get back up.
Alright, and then our questions are, what does namaste mean? Good job. Yeah.
Our second question was, what is the highest level in the caste system, and what position do they hold in society?
And then what are impolite gestures you should avoid?
Pointing.
Touching the forehead?
Yeah, those are all right. We just put it too.
So how often do Hindus customarily pray or do puja?
Once a week.
Good job.
And then instead of wedding rings, what do women typically wear?
thing I can't say. What is it besides the
Tika, or like also known as the baby.
And
So yesterday we made raspberry, which are Nepali milk balls. I kind of want you to try them before you tell what you how you made them.
they were milk based, so it was lactose intolerant.
Yeah, they're milk.
They're milk
So,
based.
there is a
I'm
sugar
amazed that
syrup.
they made them because they're not easy to
Yeah, they're hard.
They're really
There's a
hard.
sugar liquid in the bottom, so when I hand you these, just be careful not to spill all over yourself. I don't know how to okay.
I didn't try it yet.
So I want you to see how with the Burmese culture as well as the Nepalese culture that things evolved. So Buddhism started in India and then went over to Nepal and went over to Burma. So you can see why some of those cultures, some of those cultural practices are the same across those countries.
Oh, I know what you mean about the texture.
Yeah, it's a very interesting section.
Try it. Just try it. Just try it.
Let's do one. Do you want two of them, Carolyn? We have so many.
It's homemade cottage cheese.
I really like it.
Please like it? All right.
I like it a lot.
Yeah, we're not offended. I didn't even try it yet.
Props to y'all for like.
There are. Do you like them? You could eat all of them.
my God.
I am not taking them home with me.
Oh, there are quite a few more. Oh, that one.
Thank you. Nicole?
Can we tell them how we do?
Y'all did fun.
Yeah. Go for it, Lauren.
So
Curdle
to
milk.
make these milk balls, you take a gallon of whole milk and we boiled it. And when you boil the milk, it separates the solid part from the water.
Well, you have to add the vinegar
So you
to it
boil
to separate.
It's a full boil before you add the lemon juice. We learned that later. And then you add lemon juice, and the acidic nature makes it separate. And then you drain it through a cheesecloth, so you collect all the solid part, and you what's it called? Knead it. And then you roll it into balls. And then you boil water and add sugar, and you make like a syrup with vanilla. And you boil the balls in the syrup and let it simmer.
Or brown.
We used brown
Brown sugar. We didn't have any white sugar left.
We ran out of white sugar because the white sugar.
That's the only reason.
They taste good.
They're all trying to run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they dried out. We think you're socially more with it.
If you want to go for it, they're right here. You can have more. After you watch the milk separate.
Leave it open.
Flavoring what you use.
Yeah.
For what?
For flavoring?
Yeah, we added vanilla and we used brown sugar because we ran out of vanilla.
It's just milk and then you add like lemon juice, which makes it separate. And then after it's separated, you just make balls out of the milk and then you dunk them, you boil them in like a sugar liquid. So the flavoring only comes from the sugar and the vanilla.
Oh no.
Would we normally use cardamom?
What recipe did you have that? We did it later.
Cardamom and saffron.
I feel like that's more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
Yeah, it's my phone.
Do you want to do it?
Okay, since I'm going first, I'll just.
Well, I'm glad we thought so because we could have fun to make. have like a very acidic swan swimming in your river.
No, I took it down. I had my hair like really goofy, and I was like, I'm gonna go up to Katie Jones and she'll talk shit. Because like you funneling, you like, but you're not feeling nice. You're just sort of like,
So why? Yeah.
Whose was this? Whose is this? Oh.
Y'all have to like wait for me.
Well, I'll just look at you. Okay.
Staying in the region.
Yeah. Let's do that.
We're gonna be like the funny group.
Funny looking. Cool.
Yeah.
Let's get real talk and not just go.
Are we ready? Or?
Are you ready?
Yes. Okay, guys. So we did the Bangladesh culture, and I'm Bethany. Amy.
Katie Joe.
Okay. Okay. So the predominant religion of Bangladesh is Muslim, and one of the main features of that is going to a mosque and praying 5 times daily. The top picture is really cute because it just shows like the little guy who's trying to learn how to, get down and pray with all the older people. I know, it's so cute. So the language that's spoken is Bangla, and so Bengali and Bangladesh used to be a part of India, and then they both separated, and Bengali is Hindu, the Hindu religion, and then Bangladesh is the Muslim religion. And we don't have a picture of where it's located, but it's really near
Y'all know. It's right
Myanmar,
next to Lost
Burma.
Country.
It's right next to there. So
It's in between Nepal
and yeah. So we're perfect. We're perfectly situated. That's exactly where we were. And so the traditional clothing. Here's a picture of what male would wear. And is this particular one is the Punjabi? Okay, is the Punjabi. Other things include a lot of people are familiar with saris. So saris, salwar, kameezes, lehengas, sherwani, and Punjabi. I'm sure I butchered.
You know pretty well.
So that's a picture there, and then the cuisine. It's very vast and elaborate, like most cultures, but it's one of the most extensively developed in the Asia area. It's known for an assortment of fish dishes, but also notably is curry and dal and naan, the naan bread I'm sure we're all familiar with, and sweets. So we brought caramel pudding. That looks really good. We haven't tried it. And then one of the kind of pillars of the religion is that pork is considered dirty, so that is something that's not eaten. Oh,
You
and
know
then
where that originates from, right?
Religion, right?
What's it?
It's like a religious.
Yeah, but it's Muslim. Remember, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism all started in the Middle East. And so that idea of pork being dirty is really that Islamic influence that has come now to the East.
yeah.
Because otherwise, in the Eastern cultures, pork is pretty popular.
Mm-hmm.
But because it's Islamic.
Yeah, it's huge in a lot of the other areas. So that is different. So, and then this picture is really impressive because all these people, or all these things here are people. So there's this thing called Hajj, and basically it's a pilgrimage to Mecca, which is a city in Saudi Arabia. It's like a really big deal. It's mandatory to go like once in your life. You can go more than that, but it's also another really important feature of Muslim. And then, yeah, so one of the largest gatherings in the world. What they do is they circle around the city for days, and they just make rounds around Mecca, and it basically shows your commitment to God and to your religion, and is about bettering yourself.
I'm going to talk about 4 different traditions of their culture. The first one is the Bengali New Year, and it's celebrated a lot like our New Year. There's celebrations, there's dancing, you hang out with relatives, but their calendar goes by the solar calendar, and so it actually starts based off our calendar on April 14th, so that's like the start of their New Year. And so these are 2 pictures of celebrations from Bangladesh of them in the streets just celebrating the New Year, and it's when the sun goes from Pisces to Aries. The next one is Ramadan, which is 30 days of fasting, and they fast from sunrise to sunset, so once the sun sets, they're able to eat. Here's a picture of some of the foods that they would eat, and it leads up to Eid al-Fitr, which is like a huge 3-day celebration that I'm going to talk about next.
And before you continue, so Eid, are you going to explain what Eid is?
Both of them, yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah. So the next slide. This is Eid al-Fitr, and it's where they like show that they're joyous for their strengths and their health and opportunities from Allah. And they no longer have to fast, and it's at the end, and they'll all go to a mosque and say a prayer and have a worship. And it also said that if there wasn't like a mosque close by or available, they'll do it outdoors. It's like official school and government holiday that you get off for, and it's usually 3 days long. And because they go by the solar calendar, I looked up like for 2017, it would be from June 25th to June 28th. So it kind of changes. It's not like how here Christmas is December 25th. It will change because of their calendar. And the next one is Eid al-Adha. They go to a mosque and listen to a sermon. It's also done with families and friends, and they sacrifice an animal. The sacrificing is called Qurbani, and it represents the animal that Abraham sacrificed in the place of his son. These pictures look really pretty, but if you Google it, it seems like a very gruesome process. Lots of blood. And usually they sacrifice a goat or a sheep, but technically in the U.S. that's illegal. And so they can't do that here. But also with Eid al-Adha, it's September 1st through 4th. And like Bethany said, it's when there's Hajj. And a lot of times people, when they go to celebrate Hajj, it's during this time period where they travel to Mecca.
And so this is what I want to ask. So do you see the commonality between Christianity and Islam here, right? Abraham is going to sacrifice.
Okay, so some occupations that they kind of engage in daily, I kind of split them into more the leisure play side of things and then the work. So as you can see, up at the top is more the play and then the work down front, and I'll go more into detail. So in literature and poetry, Rabindranath Tagore, he's a poet, he did many other things. He was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1913. He's very respected in their culture for kind of preserving the language and the culture through poems and other works of things he has done. I guess his most famous poem, they kind of adapted it into the national anthem. And we'll play just part of it for you. So you can hear it.
It's a Bengal at the top and then English at the bottom. Yeah.
So like if they won the Olympics, this is what we're playing.
Oh, that's cool.
He's actually Indian.
Yeah.
That's enough of that. So most of the citizens in Bangladesh, they can, regardless of their education or their literacy, they can still recite recite a poem or two and add kind of like a narration and storytelling to that aspect. The graphic art, so they're really big into the pottery. They do a lot of like the water jugs and like bowls of the clay. A lot of it is used for like labor, so transferring water and things like that. But they do have some kind of decorative ones that you can see there at the bottom. They paint them and add images. Most of the potters are Hindu, so there's a small population of Hindu, but they sell them to the Muslim consumer, so it kind of unites the society through art. In the drawing aspect, Zainul Abidin, he kind of pioneered painting. Up at the top right, there's some sketches and paintings he did during the famine in 1943. The famine in Bangladesh is said to kill almost 4 million people. So these images really depict kind of the struggle they went through then. As far as painting, most of the painting they do is kind of like, I call it like street art kind of thing, because they paint, as you can see, like their rickshaws and like the sides of their trucks, and it's very colorful. It kind of is an expression for them to paint those. You'll see them everywhere. Okay, so for the performance art, music is a big tradition, and as we saw, it kind of goes with their poetry. A lot of times they add music to their poetry. The most common instruments are the harmonium, which is the keyboard kind of thing, and then the tabla, which is the drum type instrument, and the sitar, which kind of goes with guitar. Most of the things that are popular today are kind of the female-male duet, and the songs today are heavily influenced by the classical tradition, but they kind of have a contemporary flair to it. So for dance, the most traditional dance is really emphasis on the hand, the feet, and the head type of movements. It's pretty much only women, but some men do it more, especially now today. It's a big part of like some of the festivals Lauren mentioned. There's 4 types of classical dance: the Kathak, Bharatanatyam,
Bharatanatyam.
Yeah, that one. Manipuri and Kathakali.
Kathakali.
Yeah, go by her pronunciation. And I'll play just part of their like dance, so you can really see the emphasis of the hands and movement. Like fast forward it to like a minute or so. So this is like more of like the school, and you can actually see a couple men in there, like the boys. So they're kind of yeah. And so they do a lot with their hands and their feet, and they kind of decorate so they can enunciate and see it.
And you know, we have classical dance as well as folk dance. This is a folk dance.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. It's the Bharatanatyam will be the more classical.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so then plays are, there's kind of plays in the village and then in the city. And in the village, they're more traveling and they kind of stop in each little town. And then in the cities, they're more attended to by like the educated young population. And then Jatrar is like a folk drama, kind of like a
Jatra.
Jatra?
Jatra.
Okay, so it's
Oh, no, actually, in India it's pronounced Yatra. But we spell it Y-A-T-R-A.
Oh. Alright. So it's mythological episodes of love and tragedy. A lot of the plays have like heroism in it, and they're shown more in like rural areas. It's not as popular today. It's kind of been taken a seat back to the Western culture. It's kind of taken over. Okay, so in some work occupations, Bangladesh is one of the poorest countries in the world. It has a big agriculture emphasis. In all the rural areas, it's mostly just agricultural goods, but most of the agriculture is consumed in the country, so they don't really export any of that. It all just kind of stays and keeps them sustained. In the countryside, there's each week, I think, like 10 villages will kind of have a bazaar, so like a market day, and they'll go and trade their goods for other goods and things they need. So it's mainly left to the men. The service industry in the cities more, there's like a middle class of businessmen and some office workers. it's kind of an up and coming class more as we go into the age of technology. In the industrial sense, most of the industry growth is in garment and textile industries. So in the urban areas, this is where that occurs, and there's a lot of labor, like hard labor work. So as far as the division of labor for the children, since it is such a poor country, a lot of the families have to send their children to work to earn money for the family. They're often paid less than the adults, and they also work up to about 12 hours a day. So because of this, they don't really engage in school, and they kind of have to drop out to help their family. There is a labor law in Bangladesh that has the minimum legal age to be 14, but because of a lot of smaller businesses and home-based businesses, it's not really regulated, and it's hard to keep track of. So there's a lot of young children working, and they also work in hard.
They're like sweatshop.
Yeah, kind of like a sweatshop. Like you can see on the right hand side, it looks like a home base. There's a lot of them in a room. Not all of them have a desk to work at. It's mainly just the textile industry that they're being worked in. In the rural areas, there still is child labor. They're also doing the hazardous, low-paying jobs such as like brick chipping or construction or like waste picking. But it's very poor conditions, and it's what they do to get money for their family. So the division of labor for the gender, so the men are expected to be the head of their households and they work outside the home. They also go to the markets because it's an interaction with other people, and the women aren't really supposed to interact. So mostly the men do that. The women are in charge of household affairs, and they're not encouraged to go outside their neighborhood. They don't really have a voice for themselves. Mostly, education is less stressed, and their kind of authority is reserved for either their father or their husband or their brother. So it's kind of somebody telling them, you know, you can't really leave, you can't do this. They're kind of stuck to obeying, I guess you could say.
Okay, and then I looked in regards to the healthcare, and this is a quote that I found. It just said, Muslim patients, because that's their religion, do not consider illness to be a punishment from God. They believe that dying is a part of living and an entrance to the next life. A transformation from one life to another, a part of a journey, and a contract and a part of their faith in God. So this just means that they really don't see illness as something bad, because they see that once you die, you go on to another world. And so basically, I mean, they see death as not a bad thing in turn. So yeah. So just on like general beliefs, so they have a religious custom at birth. So when a child is born, an elder says the Islamic prayer into the right ear of the child. And then life support, so again, they don't see illness as something negative. And so having somebody in a vegetative state, like just, you know, kind of there and not living, but then not dead, they don't see that as something positive. And so they don't really encourage somebody to be on life support. And then autopsies and assisted suicides are not recommended or encouraged in this culture. And then diet and food, Bethany kind of touched on the food. So when someone from this culture is in the hospital, they can't eat pork. And so what they say that they need to have Muslim halal meals, and lots of times you can't have that within the hospital. And so just vegetarian meals are accepted. But they also are sometimes request to have meals brought from like their home into the hospital. So if that's accepted within the hospital or setting that they are in, they can have that. And then Lauren said something about the Ramadan exemption, or just like the Ramadan celebration. And so within Bangladesh culture, if they're pregnant or if they're just like really ill, they can actually be exempt from like this celebration. So they don't have to fast from the food they can actually eat during this time. Okay, and then some prayer rooms. Most of these are seen in hospitals, but for this culture, they pray up to 5 times a day or maybe even more. And so just having a room that's quiet, clean, and carpeted, so some place for them to go and pray whenever they need to outside of their room. And so it should be like interreligious. And so basically it's not one religion in like this room. So it's diverse. So anyone from any of like our culture can go in there and pray when they need to. And it's just a comfortable space for them. And then the healthcare team, so with this culture, we just needed to be mindful
of like their beliefs. And so, so what I found, it said we actually should limit eye contact and not touch and talk at the same time, which kind of goes against, what we're used to, because we're used to actually, you should, remain eye contact with them. And like if you're doing an intervention with a patient, then you should like have a conversation with them. So that's kind of something that I thought was, different from what we're used to. And so that's, I feel like, something that you would need to talk with the patient and see if that's something in their culture is accepted. Language barriers, we said that they do have a different language. And so if they can't understand what we're saying to them, we need to like explain it or maybe get an interpreter to help. Body coverings, some individuals are covered from head to toe, but they do have like their face, hands, and feet open. And so what I found is if they are in like a hospital gown, they should get a hospital gown that actually goes down to their wrist or goes all the way to the floor. And if that's not in the hospital, they said that they can bring one from home. And then opposite versus same-sex healthcare providers. So they said that they don't ban against like if a girl like us going to treat a patient that's a male, they don't ban that, but they don't really approve of it. And so they said that if it's a male healthcare provider treating a female, they want another female to be in the room with them or to have her husband in the room just to, like, I guess protect her. I don't know, but just to watch over.
Okay, so we chose Arnie, but we called him Ara because that is a traditional name from Bangladesh. So he is 17 years old and has developmental disabilities, also maybe some autism spectrum stuff. So they're obviously first generation Bangladeshi immigrants, and as we mentioned, they wanted to continue the Muslim religion, pray 5 times a day. That's very important to them, and go to the local mosque to do that. So Ara wants to participate in the Hajj trip that we talked about to Mecca. It's very important in the religion. He needs to be able to do that to relieve all of his sins. So first generation, yes, came to America with mom, dad, older brother, and 2 older sisters. And then about a year after moving here, his father committed suicide, which I don't know entirely too much, but it is not that great in that religion to have done that. So then his big brother is going to act as his predominant caregiver, and the older sisters do take some care of him as well. And he's having a lot of trouble with following rules and being able to stay still or engaged. He's usually off venturing around doing whatever he wants to do and moderating emotional outbursts.
Okay, so the theoretical frame of reference we chose was a task-oriented approach. We thought it was important since he was going to be engaging in a task to work up to that task by having him do task-oriented things. Our goal was to have him participate and engage in prayer 5 times daily in accordance with the Muslim religion. We observed him he was never really focused on one thing. He kind of would distract others, and so since his family is trying to, abide by the 5 times, that when he is not focused and when he is kind of talking and things, he's disrupting their prayer. So we wanted to get him to pray and also to keep it in his family so they can do their prayer as well. We decided to improve his focus by a memory matching game. We want him to match 10 pairs to keep him focused on the one task at a time so he's not all over the place. To grade it up, we said he would have to match 20 of those pairs so he's attending his focus longer than he would normally. And then to grade down, it would be 5 pairs, or 5 pairs. And so we kind of relate that to prayer, just because it's like some of the prayer might take longer and some is shorter. So based on how long he's focusing on the activity, we could translate that into prayer.
Question.
Okay.
So can
Yeah.
we just go back to
Yeah,
that
yes. Go. Yep.
task-oriented?
Go on.
Yeah. Okay. So we're using the task-oriented approach, and so so one thing definitely you'll identify, which is very obvious, is concentration. Mm-hmm. And so you're doing matching, and so matching will be more a preparatory activity
Okay.
to get him ready to then engage in this task-oriented approach. When a task-oriented approach, you're actually having some kind of a task.
Do the actual,
Yeah,
like the
so-
practicing of praying, right?
Right. So you all could probably have a game or something where he's going to go down to the floor,
Yeah.
and do, concentrate, focus, come back up, something like that.
And we can probably have like 2 things, right?
Right, exactly. You can
So-
build up. So you could definitely, he needs to be able to, his concentration needs to be worked on.
Mm-hmm.
But then it also then needs to be transferred on to what you're learning
Yeah.
doing, so that that task-oriented approach is,
Yeah.
it shows, yes.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
And you're going to be learning next semester interventions, but a lot of times if you have a 17-year-old child with autism, sitting down, doing an memory matching game, and then doing prayer, that requires a lot of focus from one activity to the other. And sometimes with like that, an adolescent, they're going to need motor activities, sensory motor activities, to help them be organized and regulated before they engage in activity that's going to really require a lot of focus.
So would like a sensory type thing be a good like stepstone to get into that? Okay.
And even this thing of going back and forth, what does it do to your, which sensory system does it kind of work?
Do you mean the game that we're trying to?
No, anything. So that requires a motor activity, right? So like, for example, we were talking about going back and forth down to the floor and back, because that's the prayer service you want the child to engage in, right?
So
The
like proprioception?
The vestibular system,
Oh, okay.
the proprioceptive system, all of those are very
Yeah.
calming, the systems that you can stimulate.
Okay.
So you would think of some kind of an activity that requires
The
those
use of all
systems to work, yes. But of course, you haven't done that. You'll only go to the vestibular system and the proprioceptive system and all that. And it'll all come, okay?
We'll get there. We'll get there. Slow
Okay,
down.
but I want you
Yeah.
to think along those lines.
Okay.
So for your paper, kind
Yeah.
of, or if you're still having a little trouble, come
Our
talk
paper's
to
gonna
me.
be
We'll argue.
awesome. You're gonna be
We're good.
Okay,
Great.
Okay, so questions. You're gonna shout them out. Which tradition incorporates 30 days of fasting?
Ramadan.
Yeah. Which event breaks the fast? Yes. What's the central religion to Bangladesh? Yes. What type of calendar is adhered to? Yeah. All right. And what is the primary type of work of the country? Yes. There's a picture. You guys get 100.
I'm surprised that they use the solar calendar because they look to the moon and it's got to be full moon.
Well, it's
when
weird
they
because
break the
like,
fast.
yeah, some things are like lunar based and then some solar, and you're like,
But is it just
yeah, yeah.
So we made a caramel pudding custard. It's egg based too. It's egg, milk, and sugar. So you don't want to.
So you plan on with the right.
Me too. Yeah, and when you're reading it, I was like, ooh, that's not. Yeah. Right. I think with task oriented, you're supposed to practice praying. That's task oriented. Yeah.
Like having to sit on one of those.
When I was making my speech, I took a while to make sure that when I was memorizing, because it was really easy for me to just copy and paste what I wrote, but it is.
Yeah.
And now, November, so hopefully nobody in our class was like,
they were doing it. People were telling me. Just love the sugar.
I'm going to. Yeah. At the top of
She's like, right.
I'm doing it and it's doing it.
The whole point.
I just feel like a rock hard. The next weekend.
Next weekend I'm in, so I have to leave at 6 and then we have to so I'm trying to
All three groups did a great job. I hope you'll see the relevance of how important culture and history of practice. So I just wanted to congratulate all three groups. You did a great job. But I definitely am pretty impressed with the kinds of things you're spoken about in terms of beliefs and values and how you incorporated it in the interventions. Because I think the more mindful you are about a person's beliefs and values, there's a better rapport you can develop with your clients. The clients are going to will want to engage with you, will open up to you, and it'll call for a better relationship and a better outcome. Okay? So keep up the good work and keep chugging along. Thank you. I'm going to ask you all, but just hold on to it. And I'll send it this email that way, otherwise somebody will, oh, there's something. Yeah, and I'll let you know. Oh, but they're all good. That was a tough one. So there you go. That we need to think about. I mean, because there's so many layers.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of fun.
Oh my gosh, I had a really fun project for us. Girls, anybody wants
I've been
these kind of
Yeah, she traded.
Oh, you drove that.
Recycling and recycle ourselves.
I was so impressed. She was speaking Spanish yesterday. Do you want this to a client? Okay. Do you like? Do you want to?
She feels guilty. Thank you. Oh, I do need to turn off this thing. Just a minute.